Hey guys, Steve Bysheim here from stevebysheim.com. I wanted to make a little correlation between diet and success. I know I've talked about this in previous videos, but this is pretty important. Um, I know research shows that the difference between wealthy people and poor people, are that wealthy people consume, I guess, less carbohydrates than poor people, and poor people eat a lot of carbohydrates, mostly simple sugars. From my observations as a former social worker, corn syrup is really the most heavily consumed carbohydrate. And corn syrup is a grain, and corn syrup basically makes you, depending on the person, it makes you overweight or you develop physical symptoms because you're knocking out, you're reducing growth hormone and you're keeping adrenaline and cortisol extremely high because you're triggering all your insulin receptors with the corn syrup, which again is a grain. And then when you drink it in liquid form, it's incredibly harmful for you. So rich people tend to not drink really intense sugary drinks. They might be addicted to coffee or whatever, but it's almost better to have caffeine than to get this. Even though that's a stimulant, I would suggest it has less harmful effects than the corn syrup does because of how it triggers all your different hormones, where caffeine just triggers mostly adrenaline. Um, so again, diet and success really go hand in hand. I know that when you go out to a nice expensive restaurant, yes, you generally almost always never get soda at a fancy restaurant. It's always some sort of I don't know, something like, usually I guess maybe liquor or whatever, or water, um, wine or water, which neither one of them bind to the insulin receptors in your body like corn syrup does, even though alcohol is not good for you also. But it's actually, in a way, it can be a little less harmful than excessive amounts of sugar. So when you go to a fancy restaurant, you get real food. You're spending 20 bucks or 30 bucks for a plate of food you could recognize, unless you specifically go to a diner and get some kind of meat, and usually some kind of canned or processed vegetable is the cheapest way to get real food. Chipotle is the fast food version of real food. But again, they're going to add a lot of fillers and additives to all of their products to make them taste good. You are getting real food, but they're adding stuff to it, so it stimulates. And that's exactly why people love it so much. If it was just pure food, whole food, people wouldn't like it so much. People are driven towards the yummy, yummy taste. You know, the little stimulation, little kicks of dopamine, and a little bit of surges you get from putting crappy food into your body. But of course, what comes up must come down, and you will pay for it. Rich people, it's not that poor people can't afford good food. You can afford good food. It's just that the choices people make. And trust me, you know, I've had a lot of money. I've also had a little money, and you could eat very well um, with not that much money. Um, it's not that rich people. It's not that you need to eat. It's not that just because you can eat well with no money doesn't mean that it's not like correlate. What I'm trying to say is just because you eat a little, like you eat only certain crappy foods, doesn't create poverty, but it doesn't help you get rich either. And because if you want to be rich and you want to get wealthy, you really got to start doing the things that rich people do, and they don't go around drinking crappy sugary beverages as often as people in poverty. There's a correlation. One doesn't cause the other necessarily, but there certainly is a correlation. So, again, you want to try to eat foods that are corresponding to your blood type, because that is going to create the little smallest amount of adrenaline response and cortisol response in your body. And your body will recover. Now, again, I've said it doesn't always feel so great to eat foods that are healthy for you, temporarily because your body will be readjusting, and it will be regenerating from the inside out. So that's important to note. I'm going to talk in another video about how the effects of carbohydrates on normal, typical people. But they all have different effects depending on who you are and what you're genetically predisposed to, depending on what kind of body you have. Not everyone reacts the same way. And not everyone who eats corn syrup will gain weight. Some people will gain symptoms. And that is where my views are holistically incredibly different than most people, because most people think that every symptom is a different category. But that's a whole topic I'll discuss in the next video. So guys, please subscribe to my videos, go to my website, check me out. I mean, I have really great information for you. There's so much information. The information I have is not very complicated. It's very simple, but it's just that there's so much complicated information out there. Going back to simplicity is almost, well, complicated, but it's really not. So I'll see you guys soon. Bye.